of tea about what's going on inside Washington, D.C., what regulators and lawmakers are thinking and working on, and what you and your credit union should be evaluating in terms of risk areas and areas of opportunity. I'm your host, Ann Petros, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at NAFCU, and today I am joined by Charlotte Nemec, who is President and CEO of Canopy Credit Union. Charlotte has led the credit union since 2018 and held various roles since she first started in 1995. Charlotte is also the winner of NAFCU's CEO of the Year Award. Congratulations, Charlotte, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ann. I'm so honored to be here and so honored to have received that award. That has been a highlight of my career for sure.
That's wonderful. It's a huge accomplishment. So congratulations again. So can you start by just telling the audience a little bit about your credit union, which is based in Spokane, Washington? Tell us about the community that you serve and why it's so important to serve the members in your community.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of our credit union, as you might imagine. We actually were established in 1956, originally to serve federal employees. And we slowly grew that field of membership through a couple mergers. So mainly stuck with the county, federal, state, so government workers in our county region. And that was our, just at the base of everything we did up until 2018. So we had realized that our growth had really stagnated. We were still growing incrementally in loans until we weren't. But we really hadn't grown in membership in many, many years. As you mentioned, I started in 1995. And from the time I started to the time that I took the CEO role, we had never had more than just a few hundred net gain in membership in any given year. And so from 1995, remember when I started, we had over, I think we were close to 14,000 members. And by the time I took the helm, we were down to 12,200 approximately. And we realized in order for us to continue to be a relevant institution, we had to do a lot of shifting. And that's part of the reason that I was so excited to take the helm. I saw the good bones of the credit union from the time I started. I love it. We have a great culture. We have a great community that we serve. Spokane is relatively small in comparison to some of the larger cities. So the county itself is about 500,000 people. It's grown since COVID, but for some reason, it attracts a lot of credit unions. I always joke around that there's 8 multi-billion-dollar creded unions doing business here in Spokane. And those are just the ones that have branch locations. That's not counting the indirect people that are still in and around the area too.
Right.
So,
Wow.
really competitive market. Our community has a lot to choose from. They have choice, and that's awesome. So we really opted to carve out our niche and guide ourselves to a place where we feel like we can really stand out from a crowded market and help our community at the same time. Lots of folks that struggle in our community that are what we like to say, instead of underserved, we like to say underestimated. So we really enjoy the opportunity to help those folks that really are struggling financially, either because they had bad credit in the past, made some mistakes in life, or maybe had no credit at all, or maybe they're in foster care and they're working a full-time job and their foster parent is not allowing them to have their own bank account without them accessing their funds. We've had that experience, so we've created some products and services around that group. So we've just really tried to focus in on that area of our community that really needs the guidance and support. So not perfect credit. And we ended up then also, when we did that when I became CEO, we also expanded our field of membership 3 counties instead of just the one. As NAFCU is well aware, the getting the NCUA to approve a federally chartered credit union to serve more than just a small group can be challenging. So they did grant us 3 counties instead of the 5 we wanted, but we got that and applied for a CDFI in 2018 as well, and were awarded the designation of Community Development Financial Institution. And so we changed our name from Spokane Federal Credit Union to Canopy Credit Union, and we've just been pushing forward from there.
That CDFI designation is definitely helpful and, highlighting the work that you're already doing for your community. What are some other, examples? You mentioned one, product and service that you're offering these underestimated communities, but what are some other examples of the work that you do to serve these communities?
I think the most important part of what we do is the financial education that we provide. I think our vision and mission sometimes can attract team members that really have great hearts. They really love what we stand for. Our vision statement is to create a happier and healthier community through financial inclusion. And people resonate with that and they want to work for us. And we love that. But sometimes it's hard to say no. Sometimes your heart is so invested in a member's story that it's hard to say, this is not a good thing for you to take out alone.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what we can do instead. It's a no end. So what comes in part of that is the financial education. So we do a lot of one-on-one financial education, but we teach financial education courses in 4 different languages to all sorts of communities, really, any immigrant community that's come in that needs assistance, just understanding the banking system of the United States. I sat through a class with a group of women that are here from the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
and their understanding, they don't have bank accounts and especially women, like we do here in the United States.
Right.
They borrow money from each other. They don't borrow it from an institution. So there's just this opportunity to help people integrate into our systems and understand it so they don't get themselves in trouble. One woman said she was at Macy's the first year she was here and got a Macy's card and didn't understand anything about what that meant,
Mm-hmm.
and got herself, so
Right.
those are the kinds of things we really pride ourselves on, reaching out into the community, do group classes, we do one-on-ones, and just helping people build that financial muscle that so many people don't have the opportunity to have, either because parents don't teach it well enough, our school systems don't teach it well enough. So it's really exciting to see that progress when people do come in. Maybe they don't have credit, they build that credit, and they're able to then build a nest egg enough to. We have one of our most infamous women that came in many years ago, that she really said, I have nothing. I want to own a home someday. And so we set her on a path, and by George, right before COVID, actually, lucky for her, she was able to get into a home. So
Amazing.
just,
Mhm.
yeah, those are the kinds of stories that keep you moving forward and saying, yes, we're doing the right thing.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, financial literacy can be challenging even for those who are born here in the States and, their families have
Yes.
been here for generations because as you pointed out, it's not something that is stressed in a lot of school systems. And so, some people are left to their own devices to kind of navigate the financial services industry and all of the products out there. And
Yes.
that is
Yes.
tough. So it's just that much more difficult for immigrants or people who, are not native to this country.
Yeah. And it's, I think the thing that my fear with people that don't understand money, maybe it's just because in family systems, a lot of times we just don't talk about that. So let alone the school systems, is that then they get caught up in, those predatory lenders, and
Right.
it really causes pain and hardship for them.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's easy to look at, well, they should have known better, but how do they know better? And so that's really, yeah, it's really easy to get caught in a cycle for people too. So trying to find a way to help them through that is, gives us the heart to go forward.
So I can imagine this is part of what inspired you to start working at the credit union, and seek an executive leadership role. Is there anything else that inspired you to head down this path?
And it's so funny. I actually, this might be a little embarrassing, but it might resonate with people. So when I started 25 years old, and I had just gotten married, and my focus was, how do I be the best wife and become a mom? And I was very much geared towards that and wanted to do that. And so I was actually looking for a position where I could have a family and a career at the same time.
Hmm.
And when I found the credit unions, the mission that resonated with me strongly. But then I actually really had an interesting role when I first started. I worked for 4 different credit unions at the same time.
Wow. How did
I,
you manage
yeah,
that?
yeah. So I did HR for 4 credit unions,
Mhm.
and one of them paid my salary, and they were the largest of the 4. And
Mhm.
then the other 3 smaller credit unions just reimbursed for my salary. And I spent 2 days at the larger one, and then a day a piece at the others. And then I had an in-office day where I would work on policy manuals and those kinds of things. So it was just a amazing opportunity for me to see the culture of 4 different organizations. And I actually landed at Spokane Federal because of the way that family was really emphasized in that particular credit union. And so it was a match made in heaven for me. I was so fortunate and owe so much to
Mhm.
those 4 very innovative CEOs who put their egos aside and decided to share an HR person. I mean, just don't see that.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely unusual, and really such a special and unique opportunity, like you said. So I can understand why, you felt committed to the credit union industry after that experience.
For
Mm.
sure. For sure.
So let's talk a little bit about women in leadership. Um, the credit union industry has, on average, more female CEOs than banks. And NAFCU has found that there are 10 times as many female CEOs in credit unions than in banks. What have been some of the challenges that you've faced as a female in the traditionally, male dominated financial services industry?
Yeah. Um, gosh, and it's such a great question. And I think that the clarification that I'd love to have for the audience maybe is really that understanding that yes, there are a lot of female CEOs in credit union land, but most of those women are coming from credit unions under 500 million in assets,
Hmm.
including myself. At 235 million, we like to refer to ourselves as these awkward teenagers. That we're at that, like, don't quite have our grown into our bodies yet. My ears are too big for my head, kind of thing. And that's kind of the place we are. But we remember what it was like to be more the we're trying to keep up in the industry at 100 million, at below 100 million. And I think as a female CEO in those, especially in those smaller credit unions, and I'm sure the largers have this experience as well, is having your voice heard. We have to lean in a little bit harder. We have to lean in a little bit, ask a little bit louder, repeat ourselves, and to get heard about the
Hmm.
challenges that we're faced with. And I know, Anne, this is probably not just in the credit union industry as a female leader. Even my executive coach that I've been using for some time struggles. It's a man, and he struggles to understand my challenges as far as um, industry wide and in the bigger world. That sometimes we're not heard. We're looked at as um, not sure how you got to where you are, but pat 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 on the head. You just sit there, and we'll ask you questions if we think you have something to say.
Hmm.
And so I think being bold and being able to have that voice it's challenging because we're not, especially my generation, Ann, We were told, you be nice, you comply, and you go along to get along.
Mhm.
And that does not serve well when you're trying to grow your whatever it may be, your industry that you're
Right.
in, grow in your own career. And I've had some accusations of being too pushy, too.
I was gonna ask you, in being bold, do you feel like you've gotten some pushback as being, arrogant or too vocal? And, primarily it's because you're a woman and trying to just have your voice heard, but it kind of backfires.
It does, it does, and I know, um, I have relatively broad shoulders. I have been told that sometimes I come across as too passionate. I'm very passionate about what our credit union does.
Mhm.
And at times I can do things like bat my hand against the counter or what have you, the desk, the conference table. And it takes like a man doing that, nobody really blinks an eye.
Mhm.
And I've called out some male executives in my time where I've said I'd be interested to know if you would have said that to a man. And I'm not gonna shy away from the passion that I feel for our industry and doing the things that I think are making a difference in our community. And so sometimes that can be very challenging. And I think that society is getting better. I think women in particular, we're raising girls to be less that compliant, kind of sit back, don't say much, be seen, not heard, those kinds of things. So I think we're going to make progress. But these women that run these credit unions that are under 500 million, such huge respect for these women. I belong to a group called CULA, the Credit Union Women's Leadership Alliance. And I'm telling you, Ann, these women, I don't even like. I look at what they do in some of these smaller shops than even mine, and
Mhm.
I'm blown away. Like, how do you do all of what you do,
Right.
and like, I don't like can survive because I
Yeah.
mean, when do you sleep? So
Exactly.
I'm in awe. I'm in
Mhm.
complete awe of their knowledge too. I mean, it's not just that they're great leaders; they're also doing the call report at the same time that they are tracking loans at the same time that they're out in the community. It's like, what happens here? So
Wearing so
I'm
many
just
different
in
hats. Mhm.
yes, so many different hats. And that's one of the things I love about my job too, is that I get to get kind of with a smaller institution. I know our 63 employees. I know their lives. And I think that does listening is such a skill that I think more women have than, and I think men are trying to get better at that, but I don't talk over people. I just want to hear what their story is. And our employees love that. And I think that's part of the reason that, the nomination process for the award, it's about how am I impacting their lives who then impact our members' lives. It feels like it's that perfect circle. So
Yes. And, what do you think makes women particularly strong leaders?
yeah, I will go back to listening.
Mhm.
I think they're not about the competition as much as they are about the inclusion of others in coming forward and building their industry, building their institution. Um, I feel such camaraderie with everybody. I mean, men and women. I will tell you. I mean, it's not just the women, but I feel such camaraderie and in awe of other CEOs that are doing the work.
Mhm.
There's several female CEOs here in Spokane that I just like wow. And Carla at Numerica Credit Union is much larger credit union. She's multi-billion-dollar credit union, and I watch what she's done with that credit union, and that gives me inspiration, and that's wonderful. And I think what we look at from a leadership perspective is we find it most of the time okay to lead with heart and to really hear and listen to people and provide them with purpose, because I think that's what people are looking for.
Mhm.
What is the purpose that we are accomplishing? You're not just here to do a loan. You're not just here to open an account. You're not just here to close a business every day. You're here because there's a greater good that we're trying to accomplish in our community. And I think that just resonates, and it feels good for people. And I think women tend to focus on that kind of stuff a little bit more. Again, I think men are coming along. I have lots of amazing men in my life that male CEOs that I really admire and look up to as well. I just think we take more time to listen to what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's my experience.
Sure, sure. No, I that resonates with me definitely. I think, there's a level of empathy that, you see in a lot of female leaders, and naturally, right, women are nurturing, and so the desire to hear from others and help others and collaborate is just instinctual.
Yeah, and isn't it a double-edged sword?
Hmm.
Because want to do that, and so we're perceived that that's the way we should be, so that when we're strong and assertive, it's like, oh, whoa, that wasn't what I was expecting
Right,
from a female leader,
right.
right? So it's a yin and a yang for us.
Hmm.
That and I've actually not seen the Barbie movie, but I've seen the quote, America, I can't remember, has a quote in the movie about not being too much of this or too little of that, and how that really does play out in real life of
Hmm.
the struggle of the push and the pull. So
Absolutely, because if you're too nurturing, right, or too caring, that can be seen as a weakness. So it's
yeah,
hard
yeah.
to win in this environment.
You got to find the balance. And,
Yep,
I think that's also comes back to who you surround yourself with, and
that's
that's what I
important.
say about, my team is I've surrounded myself with people that we can have honest conversations. When I have a male executive who says something to me that isn't productive, A, and
Hmm.
B is a little sexist.
Hmm.
And I can say that landed wrong with me. I think you should learn that in the course of us having our professional relationship, this is why it landed wrong. And we can have those honest conversations. And I just really appreciate that when we can do that with each other.
Yeah, that's great. I know for a fact that a lot of people, a lot of women in my life, that even leaders often don't feel comfortable having those awkward conversations, but there's definitely value to that, right? You can move forward, you can move past that moment and say, I want to continue to have this relationship, and this is how I operate, and the expectations that I have. And, can we work this out? I feel like
Yeah.
oftentimes the
And I
answer is
think that,
yes, right?
yeah, and it creates trust. It builds trust and respect for each other. And
Hmm.
I do believe that's where my team really excels, in that we can have those uncomfortable conversations
Hmm.
that, sometimes don't feel great at the moment, but in the end, it's the best thing for everybody.
Yes. Well, I'm learning so much already. I certainly need to be better in that respect too, but it is tough. You mentioned who you surround yourself with and how important that is. Are there some mentors and role models that have helped guide you through your journey in leadership, and, as you ascended to CEO?
Oh gosh. Ugh. Yeah, and then that's one of the reasons when having this award, it feels like, oh my gosh, there's so many people that I stand on the shoulders of who have helped me. And Susan Blaine, who was the previous CEO before me, she mentored me, guided me, and allowed me to be me. She didn't want me to be the cookie cutter of her. She actually appreciated and valued that I was different and that I would be
Mhm.
leading differently than she would. And I think she saw value in that. So I give her a ton of credit. I've got a couple of coworkers that I started working when we were hired to do when I was hired to do the four credit unions. They also hired a trainer at the same time. to do the exact same thing. So I did HR and she did training.
Mhm.
And she has been my stalwart go-to. I'm pulling my hair out. How do I deal with this? And she's amazing. She continued on the credit union industry and just retired a few years ago. Very young, she retired. And then I had my marketing director who helped guide us through the name change. Um, she left, her husband was transferred to a different job, and she left our area, but she and I still are in close communication and have become super tight friends. And she's the one that said I need to lean into the award and really absorb the goodness that is coming my way. And so I love that. My husband and daughter, I mean, Aaron, I just can't, we only have one child, but and she's a grown woman now. But I look back on my career and think about, to do this kind of work, you have to educate yourself, and to educate yourself, oftentimes you're away from home a lot.
Right.
You take those trips. So to think of the amount of time my daughter was willing to sacrifice, my husband was willing to step in and be that support system for her when I was away, all of that, those two deserve probably the most credit. And my husband still today, I bounce so much off of him, just to, here's how I'm feeling. This is what's going on. And he's just turned into this amazing listener. He probably knows way more about the credit union industry than he ever wanted to. So, yeah. And then, of course, I've had an executive coach who Kevin has been really a super great sounding board. I didn't get an executive coach until I became the CEO. And if I had to go back and tell anybody, get one sooner if you can, that it really is helpful. Or even just a life coach. Doesn't matter, executive or life coach. I think
Mhm.
as long as they're certified and they have some of the qualifications to do it, both really instrumental. And then Steve Dahlstrom used to work at, was the CEO of STCU here locally when I first began my career. And he was an inspiration to me because of how innovative he was. And he just, like, he was doing, I remember when they were doing bill pay before there was even an online app or any online anything.
Oh, wow.
And
Mhm.
they were cutting checks in the basement of the credit union to pay people's bills. I mean, I think back on that and I'm like, wow, he was so far ahead of his time. And so
Mhm.
just always pushing hard to be innovative. He was amazing at that. So those are
Yeah.
kind of the ones that come to the top of my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've been surrounded by a lot of great people
Oh,
who've supported you along the way, and that's fantastic. We should all be
yeah,
so
I think,
lucky.
yeah, I think that's the key. That's the key to
Mhm.
being successful, is who you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
And you don't have to take advice from everybody, but
Right.
it's good to get bounce ideas off of people. And especially when you become CEO. I was told by a board member when I became CEO, this is going to be lonely. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, are you kidding? It's going to be fine. These people, I've worked with these people for 22
Right.
years. I'm going to be fine. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's things that I can't really have discussions with
Mhm. Mhm.
my VP about, or a director about, or my executive assistant, so
Mhm. Yeah, but then you
definitely.
have to seek out, those other support systems, and that's a skill in and of itself.
Oh yeah, because you have to be brave.
Mhm.
I mean, and that's been something that I have a really great friend now that is on the East Coast over there in Virginia, who he and I have pretty much monthly calls. I got a text from him last night. Oh my gosh, numbers aren't looking great. How are you doing? Let's
Mhm.
have a call. And he's the
Mhm.
CEO over there, and just we just connected. I think we actually connected through LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and just created this amazing friendship that also is a mentorship, and someone I can lean on. So
That's great.
yeah.
Now, you've touched a little bit on, the challenges of um, leaning in and being bold at, a credit union of your size. And, I want to hear a little more about some of the unique obstacles that you face as a female CEO, given the size of your credit union.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that this is going to be unique to being a female. I think this
Mhm.
is unique to just credit unions that are smaller, and define small. I don't know. Under 500 million is kind of my cutoff point. I
Sure.
don't know if that's
Mhm.
right or wrong. Um, so I think the challenge that we are faced with really stems from our vendor relationships. And we are really doing a deep dive into those contracts and expenses right now. We have to have them. We have to have these vendor relationships in order to offer the products and services, usually services that being online banking, the faster payment network, you know, things that really do push your institution into the forefront of being, you can be competitive.
Mhm.
Because if I don't have that, Anne, I don't compete at all. I mean,
Well,
those are just the
right. Yeah.
table stakes.
Yeah, and how
And
do you
so
get younger consumers to join the credit union? That's the big challenge if you don't have those convenient, digital services.
you have to. And
Mhm.
so those, it can't take even 3 minutes to open a new membership. You have to be able to be competitive with the fintechs,
Mhm.
and so that expense of having to partner and not having any concession from these vendors on our size is super frustrating. And I had another CEO who just merged with a smaller credit union about actually our asset size. And the thing he said that stood out the most to him was when he was going through their contracts, and their multi-billion-dollar credit union. He said they were paying the same amount for their core that we were paying. That
Wow.
is not sustainable. And
Yeah.
as an industry, I think we have to start pushing back because
Mhm.
small credit unions need to survive. I
Mhm.
think our legislators appreciate the fact that we are here and we are doing the work, and I think it's important that we continue to keep small credit unions at the forefront of the industry in beating the drum of what we do in our communities.
Mhm.
And if we're all just multi billion-dollar credit unions, I just don't know that we can sustain that. We have a better voice with more of us having that voice and standing up. And that's one of the things I will say as a female CEO. I notice a lot of my peers in that area are not standing up legislatively and reaching
Mhm.
out and participating and getting engaged with the legislative process. There's some that do it extremely well, but I would love to see more of us getting out there and getting involved in the advocacy roles, and finding our voice. It's hard, but finding our voice when we want to talk to our legislators, and understanding why it's important that we survive.
Mhm.
So that's my soapbox, Anne.
Well, that might be just it, right? Is having the courage, being, brave enough to be bold and to speak up and to advocate, for yourself and your institution, when you feel like you're not, at the big kids table, when, you feel like
Right.
um you're already disadvantaged in a lot of
Exactly.
respects. And lawmakers and regulators alike, I think, are starting to recognize more that smaller, community institutions especially have this, you know, unequal bargaining power when it comes to working with third parties and vendors, and that something has to change. Nothing has changed yet, but hopefully we're headed
Yeah.
down the right path. And I think, hearing from leaders like you can help in that respect.
Yeah. And again, that comes back to really what is happening in your shop. And I like to tell people this is affecting my community. It's
Right.
not just affecting our institution, it's affecting our community because they want choice and they have a lot here, but they don't want just big choice in the Bank of America world, but they want a lot of other options available to them. And I think that's proven out in the fact that we are surviving in a very crowded market, right? And so I think it's just really important that our legislators understand that community choice is vital to continuing to have strong financial services available to our community.
Mhm. And I think a lot of consumers, including, Gen Z and millennials, want that connection with their financial institution. They don't just want to be another number, just another account. They want to know that the people behind the scenes at the institution actually cares about them and knows who they are. And, the people at the branch understand their family and their situation. And there's a lot to love about that kind of institution. So credit
Yeah.
unions are, well positioned to succeed in this environment, but, have to be willing to advocate, to, communicate with NAFCU and other associations to, make changes in Washington, D.C. and, at the state level to get the recognition and flexibility that they deserve.
Yeah, that is so well said, and I will give Dan Berger a ton of credit in the fact that I have had many conversations with him in the fact that, here's my challenges, and having just someone that listens from an association level that then can say, okay, what can we do differently, and also guide me to how to do things differently,
Right.
And who to talk to, and those kinds of, that is so well said, because if you're not involved, you're not going to be heard, and you'll just wallow in this frustration of no one listens to the smaller credit unions. Well, stand up and let's talk about it.
Yes. What a great message. So any advice that you may offer to a woman in the credit union industry, looking to advance her career to the C-suite level potentially someday? So, what advice do you have for that woman out there?
I give this advice to every employee when they first start, and that advice is say yes as often as you can to opportunities, whether that be a new task to learn, whether that be a new opportunity to lead in, we have an employee committee. Can you, the fun committee is what we call it. Can you volunteer to lead the fun committee? Can you find ways to say yes? You don't have to have a leadership title to have a leadership role, and get involved in the community. Reach out to other credit union peers that, if you're a teller, communicate and talk with other tellers when you go to Credit Union for Kids fundraising events. Find opportunities to say yes to volunteer opportunities, find ways to say yes to opportunities to lead within the credit union's four walls. I swear, Anne, I just kept asking for more and understanding, okay, how can I take this on? How can I learn this? So, and that's one of the things why I give Susan so much credit, is she just kept saying, well, okay, if you want to do that, oh yeah, I want to learn about compliance. I want to learn vendor management. Can I write our our enterprise risk management policy? She's like, you're HR and marketing. Why are you asking for this? And I'm like, because I want to learn. I want to know more and do more. And it just ask for more and be willing to take it on. It's my best advice.
I think that's great advice. Any other, closing remarks for our viewers and listeners today?
Gosh, and the only thing I can say is thank you. Thank you to an industry that has embraced me for 28 years and lifted me up and given me these opportunities. I love the credit union industry. I think we're doing amazing things. So many amazing leaders out there that make a difference in their community every day. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you for everything. I'm just so grateful to have had this opportunity to be on with you. The award I was given, all of it just feels like surreal to me sometimes.
Well, thank you. And congratulations again on your award. Very well deserved. This has been a great conversation. I've certainly learned a lot, and I know that our listeners and viewers have likewise learned a lot as well. So thanks again, Charlotte. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode about female leadership with Charlotte Nemec. If you enjoy watching or listening to the CUPP, please hit the subscribe button. Turn on your post notifications to get alerts about new episodes. And please let us know what you'd like to hear about in future episodes. We always love hearing from you. So thanks again to our viewers and to Charlotte. Until next time.